Meg Records, the Meg Record Keeping Institute, Entity Number 73, Abyssal Ooze / Kirai. Yeah, man, I've never seen anything like it. No matter what we throw at this stuff, it just seems to take it. It's just uncanny, really. Whoa, hey, watch where you're. Clink, splash. Now you've really gone and done it, haven't you? Of all the days to miss an untied shoelace, it just had to be on the day you were assigned to perform testing on Abyssal Ooze. You look down at your ruined Meg lab coat, completely splattered with the infectious substance. There's no point in removing it. The black slime has already absorbed into your hands like water into cracked desert ground. You stare into the deep, swirling mass of black. Thoughts race through your head as you reflect on your fleeting life. How could you be so stupid? You contemplate your dwindling future as you sit in the steadily expanding puddle of inky sludge, and you debate whether or not to accept your fate. Perhaps it's best to go out on your own terms, to simply open the door to the hazardous materials vault and grab a single bottle of cashew water, to take a few simple swigs of the enigmatic beverage and just go out with a bang. Or, perhaps, you don't need to give up on hope just yet. You make your final decision. You stumble out of the lab into the pristine hallways of Meg Base Alpha. Such a shame it would be to stain these hallways red with wretched flesh. You discard the thought, though you feel a disdain for placing the poor base janitor in such a precarious position. Duty always comes first. You at least know that much. Shakily composing yourself, you begin a brisk walk to the hazardous materials vault, perhaps the last one you'll ever take. You build your resolve as you continue your mission, avoiding all distractions on the short trek. You don't have time for goodbyes. Your friends will understand. It isn't long until you arrive at the ominous door to the object storage department. The large black letters spelling Restricted Area, Keep Out, may have kept you out in the past, but now it's just a means to an end. You swipe your keycard and the door unlocks. You stare at the inviting abyss of the darkened room. It's almost suffocating. Maybe you shouldn't do this. Go back to the lab. Try to find another solution. No, it's too late for that now. The infection will only spread from here, and you've already wasted enough time. You shut the door behind you and turn on the lights. It doesn't take long for you to find the shelf of cashew water. It's hard to miss, being surrounded by enough reality fresheners to make a smiler melt into a mere puddle. You grab a bottle and unscrew the cap. It smells nauseating. You take one last look around the room. Is this really where you want to breathe your last? The floor is of a dingy storage room. I lost the permission to care once I spilt that vial. You raise the stainless steel bottle to your lips. The putrid aroma of the cashew water makes you want to vomit. You pinch your nose and tilt back your head. Here goes. 1, 2, 3. Just as you begin to tilt the bottle upward, you feel yourself freeze. You refuse to go out like this, to die with the absolute minimum amount of dignity, to die without even having tried to fight for your life. Doesn't the Meg keep records for this sort of thing? We have our database, sure, but not everything is included in there. Surely I can find something of use, right? You screw the cap back onto the bottle of cashew water, feeling a new sense of invigoration. Despite the black lines creeping along your veins, you feel great, energized, prepared. You leave the hazardous materials vault and head across the hall to the classified records department. Hazard: Abyssal Ooze. Entity 73's liquid state, colloquially referred to as abyssal ooze, is a fairly common substance that can be found in various places scattered across the backrooms. The ooze in question is black in color, with a thick, viscous texture, similar to molasses. Most often, the ooze can be found leaking from wallpaper within indoor levels, and pooled in puddles or lakes in natural ones. On its own, the substance possesses no special qualities or dangers, outside of being incredibly difficult to dispose of. The only time an agent should pay it any mind is if it comes into contact with human skin. For more information, see files, infection patterns, and encounter protocol. Image caption: a vial of abyssal ooze. Infection patterns. Infection stages. Stage 1. Approximately 15 minutes after exposure, the victim's veins will begin to darken, becoming black and visible beneath the skin. During this stage, the subject is fully cognitive and aware of this process. While no pain is caused, subjects may feel distressed. This stage can last anywhere from 10 minutes to 72 hours. Research into the inconsistency of the infection stage is currently ongoing, with leading theories suggesting that abyssal ooze functions similarly to snake venom once in the bloodstream. Other theories suggest that the constitution and general stability level of the individual is a key factor. Stage 2. Stage 2 begins once the abyssal ooze has fully spread throughout the subject's nervous system and bloodstream. In this period, the subject will experience greatly heightened reaction time, senses, and heart rate. This stage usually begins within 2 hours after stage 1's completion and lasts for around 30 minutes. During this stage, the subject's mind will begin to slip into the clutches of Entity 73. Their grasp on reality will begin to slip, but the subject will fail to notice due to the rush of endorphins caused by the start of this stage. Throughout stage 2, the outside of the subject's body will slowly begin to be covered by a hard shell of chitinous black material. Stage 3. Stage 3 begins once the substance has spread across the subject's entire body like a cocoon. At this point, the psyche of the subject has been fully overwritten and replaced with that of Entity 73. Once the transformation process is completed, Entity 73 will engage in a complete biological restructuring of its host. During this process, roughly 90% of the subject's body will be transmuted into abyssal ooze, from which Entity 73 will sculpt its preferred form. Infected individuals within Stage 3 are to be avoided at all costs. Kirai, Concord Entity Classification System. Habitats: Majority. Indexed Entity Threat Score: Danger 3. Intelligence B. Class: Anthropoid. Properties: Hive mind, viral A, reality altering, and neurological hazard. Upon completion of the infection process, the host body will be completely overwritten with that of Entity 73's complete manifestation, a being identifying itself as Kirai. Kirai possesses a lean figure, averaging a height of around 5'8". Footnote: about 170 centimeters. End footnote. Its eyes glow with a dim, white light and are the only part of its body not made of abyssal ooze. It has short, black, quote unquote, hair that hangs down in front of its face. Its body is semi permeable and constantly ripples with motion on its exterior. Kirai can often be spotted manipulating this substance into mock forms of conventional clothing, typically preferring to manifest some sort of jacket or trench coat to hide itself under. It can alter its body mass and shape at will, ranging from manifesting additional tendril like appendages to forming non mechanical weaponry or tools from its existing ones. Behavior patterns. Kirai is well spoken and charismatic, and will often use these traits to attempt conversation with passersby. Despite this, encountering Kirai in its humanoid form is a rather uncommon occurrence. The entity's motivations are currently unknown, making this isolationist behavior a blessing in disguise. Since behavior and memory are identical between instances of Entity 73, it is largely assumed that Kirai possesses some sort of a hive mind connection with its manifestations. This being said, instances of Entity 73 have only been observed one at a time, even across levels. If an individual should come into contact with Abyssal Ooze while Kirai is already active, their infection process will simply be paused until the current host expires. While in possession of a host, Kirai tends to wander a variety of levels, making it extremely hard to consistently track. If encountered, Kirai has been known to occasionally grant certain favors to those who solicit it, with a debt to be repaid at a future time. Due to the Meg's extensive backlog of malicious interactions with other quote unquote deal maker entities, all forms of interaction between Kirai and members of the Meg are strictly prohibited. If Kirai decides you're worthy of approaching, do not engage with the entity. No matter what it may promise you, nothing good will come of it. Entity biology. Kirai's manifested body is primarily composed of abyssal ooze. A notable feature of this substance is that its quantity and compatibility varies between hosts. Some Kirai instances may be highly compatible with a host, and are able to retain control over their form for a prolonged time span. The less compatible a host is, the higher the chance its biomass will destabilize and melt down, marking the end of both the host and the Kirai instance's lifespan. Currently, the factors that determine whether an individual is quote unquote compatible are unknown. So far, research has pointed to this quote unquote compatibility to being linked with the speed in which a host is fully possessed. On average, instances of Kirai will remain active for 7 to 14 days before completely deteriorating. Instances of Kirai are highly prolific reality warpers, notably able to alter their surroundings at will on a significant scale. While Kirai normally keeps a low profile, it will occasionally be pinpointed as the source of various different large scale, quote unquote, distortions of local reality. Entity 73 is mostly passive, save for its initial infection of a host body. In the unlikely event that a physical altercation takes place, Kirai instances typically do everything in their power to avoid unnecessary conflict. This being said, it is not advised to attempt to engage with this entity in either combat or conversation. As its motivations are still unclear, it is recommended to simply ignore any manifestations you may encounter. Maintenance. As members of the MEG, our primary concern in regards to Entity 73 is to prevent infections whenever possible. Currently, numerous expeditions have been made into Abyssal Ooze hotspots, such as Level 8, cave systems, in order to drain and patch up any possible reservoirs of the dangerous substance. Information campaigns to educate wanderers on the dangers of interacting with suspicious black goo are underway, with moderate success. Research into the properties of this enigmatic substance is currently ongoing at bases Alpha and Gamma. Encounter Protocol. Abyssal Ooze. If you should encounter a puddle, patch, or vat of abyssal ooze on your expedition, do not fret. Execute these simple steps to the best of your ability. Avoid the substance with a wide margin. Adapt your travel route to steer clear of the substance. Inform the nearest Meg outpost of the location you spotted the hazard. Kirai. If you should encounter an instance of quote unquote Kirai on your expedition, execute these steps to the best of your ability instead. Avoid interacting with the manifestation. Adapt your travel route to the nearest no clipping point. Vacate the level and inform the nearest Meg outpost of the encounter. Falling back against the floor, you stare at the worthless vial in front of you. You really thought this would be the key to your salvation, but no such luck. With nothing left to do, you drag yourself to your feet and begin to walk back to your desk. You gaze down at your arms as you trudge back. You hadn't noticed due to your focus on the files, but your fingertips have become rotten with gangrene up to the middle joints. The tips have begun to calcify with a hardened black substance which feels fused to your skin. Sores open and burst as abyssal ooze runs down your hands, seeping onto the floor like maple syrup. You stare at it for a few minutes before realization hits you. Shit! How long have I been leaking? Your heart sinks as you turn around, witnessing the slick, greasy trail of black that leads into the classified records storage. You've got to do something. This much abyssal ooze is a massive biohazard, and you don't want your own ineptitude to hurt anyone else. As you attempt to make your way back into the room, you feel a tug in your calves. Your tendons and ligaments burn with an icy fire as you experience the worst muscle contraction of your life. When you look down at your legs, you suddenly see why. Your legs are covered up to the knees in black chitin that heralds your approaching fate. Moving is agonizing, but still possible. Despite feeling like your skin is peeling off like the layers of an onion, you press on. The distance to the door is only a few feet, but it feels like a mile. Just a few more steps now. If you are going to die alone, at least let it mean something. You slump into the door, jamming your useless hand into the door lever. You let your body weight push down on the handle, and you fall into the darkened room. Your heart is racing as you scan the area for a spray bottle, a mop, a roll of paper towels, anything to alleviate the steady stream of fluid leaking out of your body. You see where you left Entity 73's file. It lies only a few steps away, in a steadily expanding puddle of black. Another round of cramps sends shocks of pain up your spine. You don't even have time to ponder the implications of this before you're on the ground. Your head smashes into the concrete floor of the facility with a sickening squelch, and your brain screams with stimuli as the impact threatens to give you an early exit. No such luck. You retch onto the floor, unable to force your body to remove yourself from the puddle of your own sickness. Your vision starts becoming hazy as tiny pinpricks of blackness start clouding around the edges of your view. You look towards the floor, only to realize that you weren't lying in a pool of your own vomit. You were lying in a pool of the very same black substance that has become the bane of your dwindling existence. More pockets of ooze burst from your fractured skull, and the viscous liquid begins to seep into your eyes. You can't move your arms to wipe your face, as they've been completely encased in the carapace quickly forming around you. As your eyes drift towards the ceiling, you notice something out of the corner of your eye. A simple poster on the wall. Notice: experimental cure for abyssal ooze developed. Meg, bettering humanity. Due to recent breakthroughs in Meg research over the past year, top scientists at Base Alpha and Base Gamma have collaborated to produce a possible cure for the threat posed by Entity 73. The first batch has already been siphoned to the Medicine Bay at Base Alpha. Should a fellow agent become compromised by the toxic substance, transport them to our outpost on level 1. How disappointing. You feel your consciousness sink into a formless void. You open your eyes in an empty abyss. A veil of blackness shrouds your vision, and your mind feels hazy. You examine the surrounding area. The boundless empty stretches as far as the eye can see. Your only sense of distance comes from how far your arms can stretch. Odd, you think to yourself. You begin to trek forward, your cautious steps echoing across the void-like plain. The solidarity of the floor eases your mind as you traverse through the darkness. Panic sets in as curiosity begins to fade. I've got to get out of here. You break into a sprint, charging deeper into the void. You try with all your remaining energy to escape whatever fate awaits you, but your dash is cut short when you feel your feet sink into the ground. You feel as if you're walking on a pillow, but much more dense and deep. As you frantically attempt to retract your shoe from the strange mass, you hear a voice inside your head. It coils around your mind, writhing like a nest of vipers. At least, you think it's a voice. You can't make out any rhyme or reason to the haunting noises. It's almost like someone's speaking backwards with the pitch turned all the way down. It all makes one thing abundantly clear. You shouldn't be here. You rip your shoe out from the ground, and an intense chill runs through your body. You whirl around to see nothing, just the unchanging void you've been locked in since the start. You feel cold. Was it always this chilly? You fold your arms, trying to warm yourself up. Your hands are so cold that you can't even feel them contracting your skin. You look down at your body to try and make sense of the situation. All you see is empty space. You feel yourself sinking into the floor again. This time, you aren't able to move as your consciousness is pushed down into the depths of the endless nightmare. Your chest presses up against the moving ground, and it threatens to burst like a water balloon. But that shouldn't be possible. You don't have a chest. You reel in horror as the truth begins to sink in. You were never running in panic. You were never folding your arms, nor were you sinking through the floor. In fact, you haven't moved at all. You try to take a deep breath to calm yourself down, only to find that you have no lungs. The breath you cannot take plagues you, tantalizingly out of reach. The pressure continues to build and build until it reaches a breaking point, and then it builds some more. You want to scream, but you can't. You want to thrash about, but you can't. You want to claw at your face, to dig your fingernails into your flesh, simply to have the privilege of feeling, but you can't. You're locked in a paradoxical existence, trapped in a prison without walls. You lack any and all forms of sensation, and yet pain is your entire being. The absence of sound screams throughout the vacuum, and yet your presence is overwhelmed by the tidal wave of groaning wails. You can't see, and yet the edges of the inky black void seem to contract and expand as strange figures slip in and out of view. No, wait, you definitely saw something. You're certain. Deep in the blackness, you're just barely able to make out two pinpricks of white light. Two pinpricks that are watching you. Two pinpricks that begin to approach you. You definitely want to run, to turn tail and sprint for your life. But you can't. The pressure continues to build to degrees you could never have imagined. The figure grows closer. The noise in your head gets louder. You're being overwhelmed with stimuli, but you're prevented from feeling any until a blinding light breaks open your prison. Meg Records, the Meg Record Keeping Institute, Entity number 73, Abyssal Ooze / Kirai. Overseer Michael sits back in his chair, head resting on one hand as he massages his temple. Ever since he took over the position of Overseer A in the Meg, the day-to-day life of the job sent him in a downward spiral of monotonous boredom, the kind that would set any typical wanderer on a fast track to becoming a pile of sentient red mush. Note, see Entity 15, Wretches. Today, he finds himself at the head of an office table in Base Alpha, hearing reports from the past quarter of new developments in the research field. It was bad enough that the meeting was boring him to death, but what had to be worse was the incessant tone that his underseers took with him. Despite having been one of the major driving forces behind the revival of the Meg, despite being one of the oldest members of the organization, everyone still treated him like a child. He had been working for the Meg for over 30 years now, but he was still locked in the body of a skinny 24-year-old male. Effectively, immortality was a curse. The sheer disrespect alone. He envied those who were trapped here with a more dignifying appearance. It was the main reason he did most of his work from the shadows, anyway. And so, that's how I managed to figure out where the strings of a warning kite go. Eh? Eh? Eh, are you even listening? Michael! Overseer A flicks his eyes upward towards the researcher, focusing on him with a bored expression. Yes, I am. Well, if you could pay more attention, I would really appreciate it. This isn't high school. You can't just blow off everything that doesn't interest you. Overseer A sighs, leaning forward in his chair. He spins around toward the front of the room, resting his elbows on the meeting table and his chin on top of his hands. Doesn't interest me? I absolutely can. It comes with the job description. You all called me here today announcing an urgent breakthrough, and yet all you've delivered to me in the past 3 agonizing hours has been either irrelevant or restatements of things we already know. To be more blunt, this meeting has felt like a waste of time. The researcher put his hands on his hips. Do not take that tone with me. Just because you have a position doesn't mean you know what is or isn't important. Overseer A shakes his head. You've got it all wrong, all of you. What is it we even do as an organization? An awkward silence fills the room. We're the major explorer group. We explore. We record information on what we find so that it may be of use to the innocents who find themselves trapped in this monotonous buzzing hell. Overseer A pauses for effort. So please, do enlighten me. How exactly will spending 3 months of resources looking into where the string of a kite goes when out of sight serve to benefit the masses over literally anything else? Overseer A stands up from his seat, resting his head on the back of his chair. I appreciate the work you put in, I really do. But you're all stuck in the old ways. We simply aren't the same group anymore. We need to prioritize the absolutely essential problems we face in the day to day. So far, you've all shared very informative research. Take pride in that. However, the question becomes, why is it necessary for me to be here? I'm not your babysitter. Overseer A looks around the room. All eyes are on him. So with that, I ask but one question. Does anyone have something for us today that warrants my presence? Or should I just call this meeting adjourned? Almost on cue, an angry pounding on the meeting room door makes everyone jump. As Overseer A opens the door, a lone researcher frantically stumbles in, out of breath. Sir, there's been an accident. Overseer A raises an eyebrow. Calm down, calm down. Take your time. What is it? The researcher gulps for air and straightens himself out. So, our top researchers at Base Alpha have been working around the clock to develop a possible cure to the Entity 73 infection. We were actually able to produce a substance with very promising results. In testing, almost all of the Abyssal Ooze cells were completely destroyed. Overseer A nods, listening carefully. His eyes pierce through the researcher, signifying that, for the first time today, someone has grabbed his full attention. I see. My respects to your team for your dedication. Well, this is most fortunate news. What seems to be the issue? Overseer A asks. The researcher takes a deep breath. We've already produced our first batch of antidote. It has yet to be tested properly yet, but there is one thing that does need your consideration. Overseer A raises an eyebrow. Well, spit it out then. The researcher takes a dry swallow. One of our team members, quite responsibly, was exposed to Entity 73 during the final stages of laboratory testing roughly 2 hours ago. Since then, they have progressed through every stage of the infection process, and their cocoon is currently being held in containment on our on site ICU. The reason we have called you here today is simple. We believe that through administration of our cure, we can save their life before Kirai possesses their body. Overseer A appears to zone out, staring at the wall. Sir? With a sigh of bereavement, Overseer A heads for the door. Then, let's get moving, shall we? The bright lights of a hospital operating room flash on as two members of the Meg medical staff approach Cry Responsibly's hardened body. The stark yellow of their hazmat suits strain the eyes of Overseer A and the young researcher, who are looking in from beyond the glass of an observation room. The two caretakers make haste as they quickly prepare the room for whatever possible unforeseen events might transpire. Various different types of medical machinery are powered up and ready. Plastic coats the entire room, giving it an artificial shine. No matter what struggles present themselves, the Meg staff has an answer for almost every outcome they could think of. Ready? The first nurse asks, looking at her companion. Yeah, we don't have much time, so let's hurry. The two take a quick glance to the glass window of the observation room, and, after being given the thumbs up from Overseer A, they set about retrieving the necessary materials from a nearby tray: a hammer and a chisel, and a syringe of clear fluid. The first nurse grabs the tools, making her way over towards the top of the bed. She places the chisel at the center point of the back of the skull and prepares to hammer it in. Without a second thought, the hammer connects with the chisel, resulting in a sickening crunch, much too lightly for anyone's liking. Syringe, she says, turning around to her assistant. As she turns back around, she takes a reactive step away. The quote unquote skull of the cocoon has been cracked open, but instead of a body or fractured skull, all she can see is black liquid flowing around inside the casing. It flows freely out, running onto the floor like a volcano at a school science fair. Having been around the block a few times, she presses on. With no options left, she places the syringe inside the cavity and presses down on the plunger, mixing the two fluids inside the casing. The silence is deafening as everyone waits for a reaction. A few minutes pass, and it's starting to seem like the experiment has been a failure. The group is just about to call it quits when they hear a slight muffled noise coming from underneath the black chitin. The assistant quickly identifies the source of the noise and grabs the chisel and hammer from the nurse. He places the spike over the mouth of the body and gives it a light tap. He desperately grabs at the face, ripping the calcified mask from the body to reveal the screaming head of Cry responsibly. Help me! Please! You've got to get me out of here! I can't go back there! I can't go back there! I can't! Suffocating. Empyrean. Black. Chaos. Engine. S- Infinity. Void. Pain. Armageddon. Consciousness. The nurses rush into action, quickly grabbing the hammer and chisel. They desperately try to break off as much of the hardened substance as they can, all the while hearing the desperate cries of their coworker thrashing against the restraints on the bed. Get me out of here. Move the fuck along. Don't you understand? Just hurry the fuck up. Don't worry about the fucking chisel. Use the fucking sledgehammer. Please, please, you have to go faster. Crossing. Omniverse. Chaos. Kirai. Possession. Eternity. Depths. Rebirth. The first nurse continues working as fast as she can with the chisel as her assistants sprint around the room to search for anything to use. With nothing else in sight, he grabs an IV stand, running back over to the main bed. Cry Responsibly's face is contorted into an indiscernible mask of pain and fear as their eyes dart quickly from side to side, searching for something. The assistant begins using the metal pole in place of a sledgehammer, and together, the two nurses slowly chip away at the living coffins surrounding Cry Responsibly. Their screams only intensify as time goes on, and they sound almost inhuman. Their speech becomes garbled and incoherent, as the sound of liquid filling their throat mutes their screams into a wet gurgle. The next few seconds feel like an eternity. Their head folds in itself and begins to dissolve, like a tomato left out far too long in the summer sun. Black ooze swirls around the head and overtakes it completely as the collapsed body reforms itself in an endless deluge of swirling muck. Behind the glass, Overseer A tenses for a moment before quickly shoving the young observing researcher to the floor. Before she has time to react, a black tendril crashes into the window, shattering the thick glass into a sparkling crystalline rain. Inside the operating room, two more tendrils wrap around each of the nurses, slamming them into the walls and restraining them. The impact shakes the room, and the lights flicker rapidly before shutting off, blanketing the room in darkness. The sound of rushing liquids fills the air as two bright white ovals illuminate the blackness. Though producing very little light, they brighten the enigmatic figure's face just enough for everyone to get a very clear glimpse of who they're dealing with. Overseer A throws open the door to the ICU with a slam, causing Kirai to slowly turn its head to the side. Overseer A scowls back at the abomination in front of him. The twisted mass of abyssal ooze and flesh clings together in a crude humanoid shape, as frail imitations of clothing and hair manifest out of the blackness of its body. Its eyes stretch out as wide ovals in the center of its head, and it lacks a mouth with which to speak. Whatever the creature standing in front of him is, it looks wrong. Kirai, would you mind explaining what the fuck you're doing to my employees? Overseer A asks with a bored expression. His arms are lazily crossed as he stares down the entity. This is just a normal Tuesday for him. Kirai ignores Overseer A's comment and reaches a hand up to his head, carving a sickly grin onto its pulsating black flesh with an index finger. Its face ripples like liquid, smoothing itself out as it tilts its head to the side. A voice rings out in the minds of those present, slowly oozing over their brains like molasses. Michael, long time no see. The creature's mouth moves with the words, but no sound is emitted. The speech pattern is irregular, almost robotic, as if someone was given all the instructions on how to speak, but had never actually done so. The black flesh pulses and writhes as it speaks, the lips of the creature moving erratically in a pale imitation of speech. Overseer A rolls his eyes, unfazed by the sight. Cut the shit, asshole. If it's me you want, then by all means, come and get me. Just let my associates leave. Overseer A looks up at the electric light on the ceiling and snaps his fingers, returning the room to brightness. Kirai shrugs apathetically. It releases the two medical workers, and its tendrils all retract into its back, becoming reabsorbed into its flesh. The nurses hit the ground with a thud and scurry out of the room as fast as they can. Overseer A pays them barely any mind. Thank you. Now, what is it you want? Black tendrils rise from the ground, forming themselves into a chair for Kirai. As it reclines in its seat, Kirai flicks their finger in A's direction, causing a white plastic lawn chair to appear next to them. Fuck off, I'll stand, Overseer A says dryly. What do you want? Kirai crosses their legs and props their elbow up on the arm of the chair. They rest their head on their closed fist, as if this is the most mind-numbingly pointless thing it could possibly be doing. As Kirai remains unmoving, Michael senses it demanding an apology. The raw energy pulses into the small room, and Michael began to physically feel Kirai's pure emotion being hammered into his core. The pressure alone was completely overwhelming. He felt like he was submerged halfway in a swimming pool filled with honey. Words were completely unnecessary at this point, as Michael felt himself experiencing Kirai's message. It was vexed by the difficulty to find a compatible host, yet it still remained disdainful. Overseer A felt the words Kirai would throw: weak, inconvenient, shoddy, fragile, passable, mediocre. The amorphous figure stands up from the chair and leans in close to Overseer A's face. He can feel the intensity of the entity's aura radiate into the surrounding area. It feels like someone just crammed a ball of tinfoil into his mouth. Kirai is making a point, one that Michael reads as clear as day. Overseer A takes a step back, but crosses his arms. Fine, we're sorry. What else do you want me to say? You're a hazard to the safety of humanity here. Kirai leans back away from Overseer A, straightening itself. I have a role to fulfill, Michael. A job to be done, as do you. Kirai walks past him, patting him on the shoulder as it leaves. Nice chat. Let's not do this again, Overseer A lets out an exasperated breath. I couldn't agree more.